Welcome to Horns Up. I'm Peter K, aka Trendcrusher. Late last year, well, November to be specific, I had a chat with Alexander Jones of Undeath. Longtime listeners of the podcast would know that I'm a fan of Undeath. Their album, It's Time to Rise from the Grave, was number 2 on my list of favorite albums of last year. So when I had a chance to speak to Alexander for the second time in less than a year, I thought I'd keep it fun and also kind of talk to him about what 2022 had been for him. They were planning their UK tour, so that was quite exciting. Some of the information in this chat may seem a little dated, but it's still a good chat nonetheless. So here it is. All right. And I'd like to welcome back to the podcast, Alexander. Welcome, Alexander. How does it feel to be back again on the podcast?
It's great, man. It's good to see you again. It's good to be back. This is fun. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. But, before we get all nostalgic, I mean, even though it's been not even like, 8-9 months, but how's your day been? How are you doing today?
It's good. I'm good and busy. It's just been a crazy couple of days, crazy couple of weeks, honestly. Just lots of stuff to do in regards to getting ready for this big tour that we got coming up. Just lots of stuff on the docket.
Yeah.
So it's like every hour of every day it's just been packed. But it's good. I mean, I'm grateful to be busy.
Yeah, and for those tuning in and wondering like why we're talking like this, well, earlier this year, Alexander and I spoke when this was around the time when It's Time to Rise from the Grave was releasing, and this was around the time of Feb. And fast forward 9 months or so, the album's being touted by many already as album of the year. How does that make you feel, like, honestly?
Scared. Like, obviously it's flattering and it's very cool when you work so hard on something like we did for that album and you release it and people have lots of very positive things to say about it. Like that's amazing. That's what you hope for when you put music out into the world. But also it just it's this balancing act because now you don't want to disappoint anybody with your next album and you're already like working on new songs, and it's just it's scary, but it's scary in a very good way.
Yeah. And, last couple of days I've been spinning it. And one of the things I always feel, right, for people who kind of make the end of the year list, you always tend to forget like albums released in Jan or Feb and things like that. So I was just like listening to it. And I have to be honest, right? Like I would tend to agree with a lot of people because the album still holds up. And I have been revisiting it, especially like, strangely enough, you're going to laugh, but during my workouts and stuff like that, when you just want like something like just intense in there. So that's when I've been listening to it. But tell me about the live aspect. I mean, I know we're going to dive in a little bit later in the chat on your upcoming tour because we're actually talking a couple of days before you start off your tour. But you did have a chance during this year to kind of tour, play live, and kind of perform tracks from It's Time to Rise from the Grave. So what's the response been to the album, and how's the album been for you guys, now that you've had to actually get to play it live?
It's been great. I mean, I always feel like the best way to experience our band is to see us live. And that's not to take away from the studio aspect of things. Like we're proud of the recordings and, obviously like we hope that people like to just sit down and do whatever and listen to our music. But also I feel like the songs really come alive in a major way when you see them in person. And that's what we were thinking about. Like the live experience was in the forefront of our minds when we were writing these songs. When we were recording them, we wanted to record them in such a way that they translated the best live. So that the aspect of being a live band is always first and foremost in our minds when we do most things musically. And actually getting out and touring a lot like we have done so far this year and playing these songs live has been super rewarding because it feels like the kind of final piece in the puzzle that we were building toward, where the entire time we're writing this album, we're thinking about, oh, this part's going to sound so good live, this part's going to be great live, like blah blah blah, and then you finally get to play them live, and it's like all of your visions are finally coming to pass. So it's cool, and you know, we have a ton of touring under our belts already this year, and we've got a ton more coming up for the end of the year and also like the beginning of next year. So clearly playing live is something that we value highly as a band, and hopefully the songs translate well enough that people want to keep coming to see us.
Yeah. And would it be fair to say that 2022 has been like a breakout year for Undeath? Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, absolutely. Which is funny because like if you would ask me any other year, like every previous year that we've been a band, I would have said like, oh yeah, this is the biggest year of our band by far. Like nothing could ever top this. Which is it's not out of like arrogance. It's just like, you know, when we started the band, our goalposts, like the things that we wanted to accomplish were like, it would be cool to be written up in Decibel one day, or like it would be
Wow.
cool to like play a tour that was more than like 4 days long, you know, and then we accomplished that, and then like the goalposts just keep getting moved further and further, and we've been fortunate enough to continue to find ourselves in positions where things that were once kind of just like daydreams for us about things that, you know, we thought would be cool to happen one day, but we didn't really think were at all in the realm of possibility, just kind of keep happening. But this year by far has been like the most triumphant, I'd say, for our band, and it's great. You know, we've been very lucky to experience a lot of the things we've experienced, and the response that we've gotten has been very. We're super grateful for it. So yeah, it's definitely been like a breakout year for sure.
But I want to dive a bit into what you said, right? I mean, like, let's be honest. No one starts a death metal band thinking that they're going to play like stadium shows, arena shows, and stuff like that, right? So at least I'd say that you guys would at least have started off with, say, modest goals in mind. But the fact that like your goals were extremely modest when you're talking just getting a mention in Decibel or things like that, was that something you would say based on the experiences of your past bands, or it's just something that you'd say that let's take a step-by-step route to it? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean we're like punk rock, dude. You know, like
Hmm.
we don't have like a big shot mentality when it comes to any of this shit. You know, we're like, I've met plenty of people and plenty of bands who are convinced that their bands are like, you know, God's gift to earth, and they're going to be playing sold out football stadiums in like a year. And like, if those are your ambitions and if that's what you truly believe, like I'm not trying to yuck on anyone's yum, you know, but for us, it's like we've always just been happy to be doing what we're doing, and the way that people respond to it is the way that people respond to it. And thankfully we've been fortunate enough to find ourselves in a position where people are responding very well to it. So that's the long and short of it. You know, it's like we'll do headlining tours where we play to our crowds, like just strictly death metal crowds,
Hmm.
and then we'll hop on like a deathcore package tour that's like a mixed bill kind of thing where we're kind of the only straight up death metal band on there, you know. But whether it's that or headlining or whatever, at the end of the day, it's not about like how many people we play to or the kinds of people that we play to or the kind of bands we play with. It's just about playing music, and that's always been the most important thing to us. And also, I'm not laboring under any delusions that Undeath is going to be a stadium band someday. Like, that's just, you know, I think there's been one metal band in the history of bands that has ever like sold out stadiums, and that's Metallica. So like I don't think Undeath is going to be on Metallica level anytime soon. But you know, I'm still stoked when like 50 people show up to a show. So that's my wheelhouse.
Okay, fair enough. Now, since I'm glad you're calling it your year of triumphs. If you had to like look back, right? I'm asking you for one, but feel free to maybe go for two or three. What would be your highlights of this year, 2022?
Well, besides I mean, releasing the album is number one for sure. But beyond that, um, you know, it's got to be. Uh, well, it's well, I guess I mean I don't know when this is coming out, so I guess we can talk about it right now. But tomorrow we're announcing that we got on the cover of Decibel, and
Whoa.
yeah, and they named us album of the year as well. So don't
Fucking
tell
awesome.
anybody that for the next 18 hours.
My lips are sealed.
So that's a
Fucking
huge
congratulations, man.
accomplishment.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's a massive accomplishment. Like I'm so proud of all of us for getting that done. I mean, to me personally, it means a ton because I mean I was a Decibel subscriber for years. You know, I had like the printed out Decibel covers like pasted up on my wall in my childhood bedroom. Like it's a huge deal for me personally to have that happen. So that's beyond the album coming out. That is like something I'm definitely the most proud of. Also, like touring with Dying Fetus was huge
Yeah.
because that was a band that I loved growing up, and that was a band that kind of introduced me to a lot more like extreme metal and in that kind of world that we live in. So getting to share the stage with them every night and hang out with them backstage and get to know them personally was that meant a lot to me. So that was also very, very cool.
Awesome. So, you know what? I'm going to do something different this time. Instead of us focusing, at least at the start of the conversation, on it's time to rise from the grave, let's go back to your early days. Because I think like that's one of the things, right? Like, let's give our listeners, those especially who've never heard of Undeath, let's go back to the demo days or maybe your early EP days. Let's play a track from there. Which track would you like us to play?
Oh, let's do Grave Osmosis off of Sentient Autolysis, which was our second demo. I love that song.
Okay, awesome. So here it is. All right. And that was a taste of early Undeath. I certainly remember it because there was a huge kind of buzz. And I think that's one of the things we talked about uh, in our last conversation also, just how I've kind of seen Undeath kind of just gain this buzz. So I'm totally stoked for you guys and what you all have been doing this year. But let's flip the question this time, right? Because let's be honest, like a lot of times we focus only on the positives in there, but what would you say would have been, and again, feel free to kind of interpret it the way you want. The way I was looking at is what's been like tough moments for you this year, like, but also in terms of learning moments, because with the highs comes the low also, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's just I think number one for us has been learning how to balance like the touring schedule that we
Hmm.
have with staying on top of writing. Because
Oh boy.
when you're touring as heavy as we've been, like the writing productivity suffers as a result. And we kind of come from a world where, up until the beginning of this year, pretty much, our thing was we play a couple shows and then we come back and then we focus on writing for like months on end. So that's how we've been able to turn out music as fast as we've been able to because it's basically all we've done. But now the schedule has flipped that we're just touring all the time and
Hmm.
we're trying to squeeze in as many minuscule moments of like writing time as possible in between tours. So that's definitely been like a big challenge to overcome. And I think we're still working on it. We haven't been like lazy in our times off of tour. Like we've still been writing a lot. We've got songs written. We're playing a brand new song on this upcoming tour, so we're still like on the ball, but we're definitely uh, behind the curve in terms of writing in a way that we haven't ever really been as a band. Which it's not necessarily a problem. It's a new perspective that I think we're all kind of getting used to and learning how to manage.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting, right? Because I've always wondered, especially in the last few years, right? Like bands who are kind of just touring and just have that cycle of album tour, album tour, album tour, like how they've been kind of managing it together. And it's not easy, right? Like I think it's a great analogy is just like juggling, right? It's how do you manage to keep those balls in the air for as long as possible, and learning that and doing it deftly is the key, right?
Yeah, and a lot of bands are able to write on the road, and I think a lot of that comes from the luxuries that they have. I know a lot of bands that write a lot on tour tend to be bands that tour in like buses and
Oh
bandwagons
yeah.
and stuff like that. But for us, it's like, we're us, including our tour manager and our sound guy, we're seven people in a van. So
Wow.
we're not trying to spend any excess time in there. So when we get to the venues or whatever, we're piling out of there and doing anything but thinking about death metal for the next couple of hours. So yeah, it's like maybe when we not when maybe someday if we have a more like luxurious touring setup, we'll be like the kind of band that just writes nonstop on the road. But for now, it's like it's the kind of thing that's got to wait until we get home.
Wow. So I have two very interesting questions, right? Because I never realized it was seven guys in a van. Let's start off with the slightly easier one. What's one thing you realized about your bandmates that you didn't until you all started touring so much?
um, it's like some people that you would expect to be cleanly are very messy, and some people that you would expect to be very messy are in fact like very neurotic about cleanliness. So like it's just kind of a testament how you should never really judge a book by its cover, I guess. But we all like each other, and that's important. Is that we're all like friends first, so we get along tremendously as a band, and each one of us has our little quirks when it comes to living in such confined spaces for months on end. But it's never anything that leads to fights or tension. Like I know plenty of bands where they get on the road for a week and they're like ready to break up because they just can't stand each other anymore. But all of us are so cool headed and easygoing that even with our little you know eccentricities,
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
we're all like fine with each other, which is good.
Okay. So here's one thing that I keep hearing from a lot of bands, but never have really had a chance to talk to, is what's one, okay, let's not make it food item, but what's one cuisine? Because again, like every part of the United States has a different kind of cuisine, right? Like, what's one part of cuisine that you're not looking forward to eating? I mean, other than McDonald's, let's be honest, right? I don't think
Oh,
anyone wants to would agree.
oh, well, we're a McDonald's band, dude. I mean, like we
Oh,
like we don't the taste isn't great, but like we love McDonald's. Like it's always there. When you leave a show at 1 in the morning and you've got a 6 hour drive ahead of you through the night through fucking Kansas or something, like the only thing your only option is McDonald's. So like
wow.
we ride for the clown for sure. But uh one more general thing that we don't look forward to is pizza anywhere outside of New York State.
Oh, wow.
Because
Yeah.
I mean, like Connecticut, it's good. I shouldn't say anywhere outside of New York, anywhere outside of the tri-state area,
Hmm.
because like New York is obviously the best. You can still get good pizza in Jersey. You can get good pizza in Connecticut, but once you get past like the Pennsylvania state line, it's just a joke everywhere. And it's like I'm not trying to disrespect anybody who has recommended us pizza in the past, but because I know they mean it from a good place, and they're just trying to like hook us up. But we've played so many states and so many cities where we roll up and people learn that we're from New York State, and they go, "Oh, you guys are from New York? Like, there's this pizza place that you have to go to. It's like authentic New York pizza."
Oh
And
my
we've just been burned by that so many times, where we go and it's just like the worst pizza any of us have ever had. So it's
God.
gotten to the point that like I'm just once we leave the tri-state area, I'm just not trying to eat pizza. Like I'd rather just have McDonald's at that point.
Fair, fair. Okay, but another, I think, interesting thing I also never thought about touring life, and I think that's what happens in the last couple of years, right? Like you just forgot about touring, but also is that when you're spending so much time traveling, and you're seven guys in a van, is music, right? Now, a lot of times that's a way to discover bands, especially when you're picking up music on tour or there's new releases coming out and stuff like that. But also sometimes I've heard of experiences where it veers to the other end, where people are listening to like pop music or just anything non-death metal. So at this point, where does the Undeath camp rank, like on the ends of the spectrum? And what's the favorite so far?
It's sort of like a 70-30 split between anything other than metal and all things metal. And it mostly just depends on the vibe. Like I'd say most of the time when we're in the van and we're just like cruising and everybody's awake, it's not metal. Like we listen to a lot of like prog rock, a lot of like classic rock. We listen to a lot of like Genesis, a lot of Zeppelin, a lot of like Peter Gabriel solo stuff, a lot of Phil Collins. Like it's just stuff that you wouldn't really
Wow.
expect a like a death metal band to be listening to. But it's just like when you spend so much time driving, and those are the moments like when you're in the van that you're kind of allowed to decompress and not think about being a metal musician. It's easy to just throw something on and just relax to it. And that's where stuff like Genesis and Pink Floyd and like all like the very heady 70s 60s rock bands really come in handy, because you can just kind of turn it on and just have it be good background music, and you can drift in and out of it. It's engaging, but it's not like so intense that
Yeah.
you are just in a weird space. But also, there's still times when we get in the van and we're like, yo, let's listen to Cannibal Corpse right now, because we're just so sick of listening to like Genesis. It's like, so it kind of wavers back and forth a little bit. But I would say, yeah, most of the time, not metal. But that's not to say we never listen to metal.
Okay, fair enough. But I think at least before we make the transition to the next part of our conversation, any band that you've kind of discovered on tour this past year you want to give a shout out and maybe let's play a track from there?
Like a band that we've played with?
Sure, why not? Let's go for it.
Let me think about that. We've played with a lot of bands recently. I was aware of the band before, but just seeing them, and I was a fan, but seeing them live in Dallas made me even more of a fan. I want to shout out Malignant Altar.
Okay,
They're just a excellent death metal band. And let's play the song. It's kind of a long one, but let's play a Ceremonial Decapitator. That song is sick.
Okay, awesome. So here it is. and that was Malignant Altar. I have to be honest, right? There's a lot of death metal, and I think this is something I'll repeat from our conversation from earlier this year, right? Is that every year I keep saying that there's so much new death metal, there's so much new grindcore coming out. Because again, those are genres that I really enjoy. But I have to ask you, right? And one of the reasons I really wanted to talk to you is we share the common thing of just being like metal nerds, right? Like it's not just about the music, and you just kind of go in just exactly the way you're talking about, like even Pink Floyd and Led Zeppelin, bands like that. But having just like, spent so much time not only just like playing music, touring, also, kudos on your column that you started a few months ago. What are your thoughts on just like, let's start at least generally with state of death metal, right? I mean, you've got bands like 200 Stab Wounds, Mule Maul. I mean, do you honestly feel that there's enough bands that you can now kind of have like a sub genre, if that makes sense, of like the caveman sound? Or do you just think that it's going to be this like niche that's going to just stay there? Because let's be honest, there has been a rise in those bands, right, in the last at least couple of years.
Yeah, I think that death metal is in an awesome place right now, and I think that there's plenty of bands coming out drawing from plenty of different influences within death metal that you can't just limit all of it to like the caveman thing anymore, right? And I think that's what people were trying to do at the very beginning when it was like strictly Maggot Stomp.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
It was, same with Sogobog, Frozen Soul, like all the bands that were kind of rising from that label. And it was easy to kind of pigeonhole into, okay, like every new death metal band is a caveman band, like got it. But now, there's bands like you said, Maul, 200 Stab Wounds, there's Mutilatred. They've been around for a little while, but like Mortal Wound. There's so many bands coming out that have such disparate influences that it's almost like the new wave of death metal is just that. It's not this isolated subgenre. It's just this big cresting wave of like new and exciting bands that are kind of all over the place within the spectrum of death metal. And I think that's great, because I think that when you have a scene that arises and it's all kind of drawing from exactly one thing, it can get kind of boring. It's not metal, but you look at a like hyperpop, which is kind of like the 100 Gex kind of thing. Like those bands or those projects, I should say, rather, are like, they're cool, they're interesting, but they're only really interesting to an extent because they're all kind of trying to do the exact same thing. But when, in the case of death metal, when you look at a band like Frozen Soul versus a band like Fetid, like they don't sound anything alike. The only thing that's similar about them is they play death metal. So that gives me a lot of hope for the progression that new death metal bands can continue to have.
Yeah. No, and I'll agree, right? I mean, like, to draw parallels, that's exactly what happened a couple of years ago with synthwave, right? Like you had that entire revival of the 80s sound, and then every other band, I think, like down to the artwork, it was all just kind of like very similar, right? So again, you had certain labels that got stuck with kind of having, I guess, pioneering that sound. And I think that's exactly, in a certain way, I'd say what happened with Maggot Stomp. But I totally agree with you, right? I mean, I think what happens is it's the same kind of analogy, I would say, that people say all metal sounds the same, or like all death metal sounds the same. Like unless you really tune in and kind of figure out that there is like certain nuances, certain things that you'd never really pick up if you just have that point of view.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think, not to self-promote too much, but if you look at like the headliner that we're doing with 200 Stab Wounds, I think that tour is a perfect example of the various different places that death metal is in right now, because it's not just four bands that sound exactly the same. You've got mean, granted, Enforced is the outlier, right? Because
Yeah.
they're kind of like a crossover thrash band. But just speaking, and they're great. Like I love that band. But just speaking to the three death metal bands on the tour, you've got Phobophilic, who obviously draw from the like Demolic Finnish death metal side of things. You've got us, who we're clearly like, you know, Cannibal Corpse, like 6-8 death metal. Like that's what we're all about. And then 200 Stab Wounds, and they kind of come from not like the more hardcore world of things, but they definitely like love their breakdowns. Like that's kind of their wheelhouse. So you've got three different bands right there on one tour that all kind of came up around the same time. Like I think we all kind of got started in like 2018, 2019, and we're all identifiably death metal bands, like unquestionably, but we all sound different enough that it's not just like uh one band after the other just trying to do the same exact thing.
Yeah. But now I'm just gonna build on it because that was the most obvious progression to what you're saying. What's it gonna be like 6 weeks on the road, man, with four of these bands? Because it's fucking crazy. Like when I saw it, I was like, is this possibly the heaviest lineup I've seen recently? So what are you looking forward to again, other than the food and everything else that we talked about?
It's great. I mean, this is the first tour that we've ever really gotten a chance to do where we've been able to do everything on our terms. And it's like, you know, we're grateful for doing like support tours and stuff like that, but you know, those tours obviously aren't built around us. Like we're just happy to be there. But this tour is like we, you know, we in Undeath, like we kind of built the lineup from the ground up. Like we knew we wanted to tour with 200 Stab Wounds. We knew we wanted to tour with Enforced. And like we've wanted to tour with Phobophilic forever, like since the band basically started. So that was all very what's what we're looking for? Predetermined. Like that was exactly what we wanted to do. And just the other big thing was we wanted to tour with bands that we knew liked to have fun, you know, because sometimes you go on the road with bands and you know, I get it, like everybody's different, everybody handles touring differently, but sometimes bands kind of really keep to themselves and don't really want to hang out, and you know, they get out of the van and they just kind of like sequester themselves in the green room and don't really interact with you. And it's like it's fine, but we picked these three bands beyond the fact that we love them, but also because we know that they like party. We know that they're fun to be around. We know that they're going to like have a great time on the road. And that's a big aspect of it. It sounds kind of silly, but when you're touring for 6 weeks, like you want to be on the road with people that you know are happy to be there, with people who are like stoked about touring and about playing shows. So it's going to be great. I'm really looking forward to that. You know, we already know the guys and all the bands too, which is another big thing. Like we played shows with all of them already. So I'm just looking forward to spending time with them and hanging out with all the guys and all those bands because they're just great people, top to bottom.
Yeah, and I think that's awesome also if you think about it, right? Like considering just you talked about your early punk rock roots kind of thing, right? And just to kind of get the opportunity put this together and yeah, it'll be exciting. I mean, like when I was looking at it and I noticed it's as long as it is, I was like, wow, like that's truly something. Because let's be honest, right? Like while you're talking about it, it's not just about performing and playing music, right? It's also about all the various things that you have control of, but also the various things that you don't have control of, right? So
Yeah, totally.
it's not that easy. And let's be honest, right? Like in 2022, touring, while technology has helped make easier, it's also got more complex.
But yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. Like there are so many things that have gotten easier. Like there's a whole app for just managing tours now, which is crazy to me because I've never
Wow.
experienced that. It's like there is an app that people use that shows you like exactly when you're supposed to load in every day, exactly when your set time is, like what
So
the
wait,
parking situation is.
this is the first time I'm hearing about it. So is this like a project management kind of thing where everyone's kind of linked
It,
in?
it's an app called Master Tour.
Okay.
Dude, it's the craziest thing. Like I've been touring, you know, on and off for over 10 years at this point, and like it blows my mind because the world that I'm used to is you roll up at the venue an hour before doors and you throw all your shit into the middle of the room and then you just kind of hope for the best. But this is an app that all the tour managers use that has like every hour of every day just broken down into like what exactly you're supposed to be doing at what time. And it's just
Wow.
crazy. But
But
it's like
but
stuff like that exists, which is cool.
but doesn't that take a bit of the spontaneity out of the situation? I mean, like, I don't know. I mean, like, hypothetical situation. I know pizza's out of the way, but like, say you hear that there's like the most amazing New York style pizza, like, and you have to take a diversion, right? That's something probably that you do, but I had to throw
Hey,
that in.
I agree with you. I mean, I like in my world, I'm still so used to touring being this thing where like you never know what's going to happen at any given moment. So like I do kind of miss that sometimes, but at the same time when you're dealing with like getting 4 to 5 bands all like on the same schedule for 6 to 7 weeks on end, like having a person who has some semblance of an idea of what's going on can definitely be like a huge help.
You know, quick thoughts on Master Tour. I hope the person managing it is like one of those people who's like, really on time and everything, or he's like a former school teacher or something like that, because that's the only way I think it would work with, having so many musicians all wanting to wreak havoc or party and stuff like that, right?
It typically the responsibility typically falls on like the only sober person, you know. So thankfully, our tour manager, his name's Grotto. I mean, we love him; he's the best. But yeah, he's like the only one out of all of us who just doesn't drink. So he is
Wow.
responsible for that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's not easy, right? Especially when you have like you said, so many dates and so much more going. But I have to kind of ask you this question because I noticed that you've already announced dates for your UK tour next year, and that's happening in your touring with Celestial Sanctuary. Uh, what more can the listeners and fans expect from Undeath in 2023? At least what you can tell us so far, because this is going up sometime at the end of the year before.
Yeah, you know, we've got well, we just booked a little mini tour in a very far away place, so I can't reveal where that is just yet, but it's a place that people have been asking us to come to basically since we started the band. So I think people are going to be pleased about that. We've got more touring on the books. I mean, hopefully, we're kind of in talks in like the early planning stages right now of doing like an actual proper European tour. So hopefully that pans out. I mean, we'd love to get over there and play some festivals and just play like mainland Europe. That would be great. So there's that. You know, we're gonna tour the US at least 1 or 2 more times probably. So that's coming down the pike as well. So yeah, just a shitload more touring, and then beyond that, maybe we'll try to fit in recording another album. I mean, we'll see. It's tough. It's like we keep our timeline for when we might actually be able to record, 10 new songs worth of music keeps shrinking every day because we keep accepting more tours. So it's like we'll see. I'd love to because I'd love to get more music out sooner rather than later, but I'd say the main thing right now is we're just going to be hitting the road really, really hard and playing a ton of new places.
Okay, awesome. So there's definitely many more opportunities for people across the world to check out Undead. But I know I'm going to put a gun to your head when I ask you this, but so be it. I can't let you go without asking you this question. If there's one band, one album you'd want all the listeners to listen from 2022, which one would it be? And I'm going to play a song off it right now.
Oh, let me pull up my list of albums from this year because I don't want to shoot from the hip here.
Fair
Uh,
enough.
one album, just scanning through. I mean, I keep a list on my notes app. It's like everything I liked from this year.
Wow.
I'm very OCD about this kind of thing. Hey, let's see. Let's go with okay. There's a band from Quebec, I want to say. They're called Sedimentum.
Okay.
And they're just a crazy death metal band. They're so good. And they put out a new album this year. I'm gonna butcher this pronouncing. I have to get it in front of me. I know this is probably insanely boring for people to listen to, but I'm not gonna disrespect them by not remembering. Okay. The band is called Sedimentum. It's Sedimentum. I'm not gonna spell the album name. It's Suppuration Morphogenesequa, I think.
Whoa.
I have no idea if that's correct. It's probably not. They're just fantastic. It's probably my favorite death metal album that came out this year. And the first song on the album is called Crypto Chronic 2. And I would love for people to listen to that.
Awesome. So here you have it. That's Alexander's pick to end the show. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll end the show with a track. But any last shout outs, anything you want to say, Alex? The floor is all yours.
Yeah, I mean, just shout out to everybody who's come and seen us at a show this year. Shout out to everybody that is planning to come and see us. You know, it means a lot to us. It's how we pay our rent. So we definitely really appreciate it. Thanks for all the support for the album this past year. It's been amazing. The response has been like truly overwhelming. So thanks everybody for that. And bro, thank you for talking to me. This was fun. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, man. Totally enjoyed this, and all the best for the tour.
Thank you, man.
that was Alexander Jones from Undeath. Do check them out if you haven't already. Well, I'm going to be talking a lot about them in the coming years for sure. So, are you releasing music in 2023? Well, hit us up. We're at the rate HornsUpPod on Twitter. You can hit up Animesh at AsmodeAnnie. I'm at Trendcrusher. And this was Horns Up.